Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. Let me ask you something that may feel unsettling. Have you ever questioned why a woman who barely knows a man will sometimes choose to be intimate with him? You've probably been given the simple explanation: attraction, desire, or maybe a few drinks. But the reality is far darker, far more layered, and it exposes something men were never truly meant to understand. Tonight, I'm going to lift that veil for you because once you see what is genuinely happening beneath the surface, you will never interpret female behavior the same way again. Consider this: a woman's decision to give herself to a man isn't always rooted in romance, love, or even physical attraction. Sometimes it is driven by forces she herself doesn't consciously recognize. Forces that reach into her psychology, her survival instincts, and her deepest insecurities. And men who fail to grasp this truth are constantly blindsided, left questioning why she disappeared the following morning or why she attached herself to him in ways that made no logical sense. The mystery isn't random, it is embedded deep within female psychology. What society refuses to acknowledge is that women carry multiple layers of reasoning behind intimacy, and the vast majority of those reasons are never spoken aloud. On the surface, she may describe it as chemistry, but underneath exist hidden motives, psychological triggers that can lead a woman to surrender to a man she barely trusts. These reasons aren't shameful or disturbing, they are deeply human, they are primal. But if you as a man cannot identify them, you will continue mistaking attention for desire and desire for genuine love, and that is precisely how heartbreak is created. Right now, you are likely replaying certain moments in your memory, attempting to make sense of that one night years back. Why she appeared so drawn to you and then withdrew completely, or why she chose someone you were convinced was far beneath her standards. It is time you understood. Women rarely operate on impulse alone. They move through subconscious calculations, sometimes selfish, sometimes protective, sometimes even self destructive. And here is the uncomfortable reality: these concealed reasons have nothing to do with whether you are enough or not enough. They are about her internal wiring, the triggers that speak to her in silence. Once you learn to hear those whispers, you will begin recognizing patterns that others completely miss. You will stop feeling bewildered when she makes decisions that appear entirely irrational. You will finally possess the understanding most men never uncover. One hidden reason women are intimate with men is validation. And I don't mean the surface level acknowledgement she receives from social media likes or compliments across a crowded room. I mean the deep, almost desperate hunger to feel chosen, to feel desirable in a world that relentlessly tests her worth. For many women, intimacy becomes evidence: evidence that she is still attractive, evidence that she still carries power, evidence that for at least one night, a man selected her above everyone else. Picture this: she has been questioning herself, perhaps following a painful breakup, perhaps after long stretches of silence from men she quietly hoped would notice her. Then suddenly you appear. You speak the right words. You make her laugh effortlessly. You look at her in a way that cuts straight through her defenses. For her, giving herself to you isn't purely about desire, it is about reclaiming her sense of worth. In that moment, you become her mirror, reflecting back the image she is desperate to believe: that she is wanted, valuable, and irresistible. And here is where men frequently misread the situation. You assume she was intimate with you because she is genuinely attracted to you. But sometimes you are simply the vessel through which she proves something to herself. That doesn't make her calculating, it makes her human. But if you mistake validation driven intimacy for authentic desire, you will inevitably face confusion when she withdraws, when she disappears without explanation, or when she behaves as though that night carried no weight whatsoever. What makes this hidden reason so difficult to detect is that it remains completely invisible. She will never tell you she was intimate with you because she needed to feel chosen. Instead, she will allow you to believe it was about chemistry, connection, something faded. But beneath all of that, it was about filling an emptiness she had no idea how to confront. And when that emptiness returns, her distance follows immediately after. This is why so many men consistently misread women's behavior. You accept the story she presents on the surface, but the truth lives buried within her psychology, within wounds you were never permitted to see. This is precisely why men must stop interpreting intimacy at face value. Not every shared night means she envisions a future with you. Sometimes it simply means she is trying to convince herself she remains desirable. Sometimes it carries no deeper meaning than her private battle with her own insecurities. If you never develop this awareness, you will always confuse being used as a temporary remedy with being genuinely loved. Another hidden reason women are intimate with men is escape. Not from you specifically, but from themselves, from their lives, from the invisible weight they carry that no one around them ever truly sees. You must understand that women exist within a relentless storm of expectations. Be beautiful, be self sufficient, be tender yet resilient, be desirable yet never too accessible. That unrelenting pressure constructs a prison within her mind, and sometimes intimacy becomes the door she rushes through to leave all of it behind, even if only for a single night. Imagine this: a woman who feels completely trapped within her own existence, suffocating beneath responsibilities, frozen within relationships that leave her entirely hollow. Then you arrive. Perhaps you are different from everything she knows. Perhaps you carry an element of danger. Perhaps you simply exist outside the world that is slowly consuming her. In that moment, you don't merely represent a man, you represent liberation. For her, being intimate with you isn't purely about physical attraction. It is about breaking free from the invisible chains she has been carrying for years. This is precisely why you witness women making choices that appear completely reckless. A mother with children waiting at home, drawn powerfully toward a man she fully knows she shouldn't pursue. An accomplished professional woman willing to jeopardize her reputation for someone far outside her usual world. To everyone observing from the outside, it appears chaotic, destructive, impossible to comprehend. But to her, within that stolen night, she is no longer the devoted mother, the composed professional, or the woman the entire world has constructed expectations around. She is simply free. She is simply alive. And intimacy becomes her escape from the identity that the world permanently attached to her. Men consistently misunderstand this dynamic. You interpret her enthusiasm as proof that you are exceptional, that you ignited something rare and unprecedented within her. Occasionally, that interpretation is accurate, but more often, you were simply the exit she had been searching for. The reason she smiled differently around you, laughed more freely, reached for you as though she had been starving, it wasn't entirely about who you are. It was about what you represented in the quiet corners of her mind. And when that freedom disappears, when she returns to the life she briefly escaped, whatever existed between you dissolves like something that was never fully real. This is why so many men are left completely stunned. You were convinced the chemistry was undeniable, the passion was extraordinary, the bond was unlike anything either of you had experienced before. And yet, she disappears, leaving you questioning everything you believed you understood. The truth is, for her, it may have been equally unforgettable, but unforgettable as liberation, not as a foundation. If you cannot recognize that distinction, you will perpetually mistake her momentary rebellion for permanent devotion. A third hidden reason women are intimate with men is power. Not the kind you typically imagine, not the sort proclaimed from platforms or celebrated in public. I mean the quiet, invisible power of influence, of leverage, of control within a world where men frequently hold every advantage. For certain women, intimacy becomes a weapon, An instrument, a method of reminding themselves that they retain the ability to bend desire entirely to their will. It isn't always a conscious decision, but it is undeniably real. And once you recognize it, you will never be able to unsee it. Envision a woman who has spent years feeling overlooked, undervalued, or completely dismissed, perhaps by men she deeply admired, perhaps by the world around her. When she chooses to give herself to a man, particularly one who appears beyond her reach, she doesn't simply experience physical intimacy. She experiences something that feels like triumph. In her own mind, she has demonstrated something significant. She proved she could draw a man that others desired and make him entirely hers, if only temporarily. For her, that night isn't simply passion, it is conquest. This is why you observe women gravitating toward men of status, men who hold positions of influence, or even men who already belong to someone else entirely. To outside observers, it appears chaotic and incomprehensible, but within her psychology, it is about accessing a form of power, about experiencing the intoxicating sensation of holding control she almost never feels within ordinary daily life. And if she can walk away knowing she possessed him, even briefly, that feeling of dominance burns itself permanently into her memory. Here is the unsettling truth most men resist acknowledging. Sometimes you weren't selected because of who you genuinely are. You were selected because of what defeating you represented to her internal narrative. You were a symbol rather than a soulmate. And if you never arrive at that realization, you will consistently misinterpret her motivations entirely. You will convince yourself it was love, when in her reality, it was simply victory. You will believe you held genuine significance when, within her story, you were merely confirmation that she was capable of winning. This does not make women villains, it makes them human. Men have always competed for recognition, status, and dominance. Women compete as well, but through subtler, far less visible methods. Intimacy becomes one of those hidden arenas, and unless you develop the ability to recognize it, you will continue walking into circumstances where you mistake her pursuit of power for something that resembles real connection. You will offer your heart while she quietly takes the satisfaction of knowing she could have you whenever she chose. And here is what causes the deepest pain. When a man fails to recognize this dynamic, he walks away feeling used, discarded, and deeply betrayed, not because she harbored any hatred toward him, but because her purpose for being present was never aligned with his from the very beginning. The fourth hidden reason women are intimate with men is a profound longing for connection. Not the surface level connection that emerges through casual conversation or playful flirtation, but the deep, persistent ache born from feeling completely invisible within a world that never genuinely listens. For many women, intimacy becomes the singular space where they can temporarily feel understood, held, and truly known. And this reason is the most haunting of all, because it uncovers a truth men almost never notice. Sometimes she isn't offering you her body, she is offering you her loneliness. Consider this. She moves through her days completely surrounded by people, colleagues, family members, friends who have known her for years. Yet somewhere deep inside, she feels entirely invisible. Nobody genuinely asks what she thinks. Nobody asks what she is afraid of. She carries her secrets, her uncertainties, her quiet pain in complete silence. And then, late one night, she finds you. You listen, perhaps more attentively than anyone before you. You reach for her in a way that feels grounding, almost protective. In that fragile and unguarded moment, being intimate with you feels less like desire and more like relief. For one night, she is no longer invisible. For one night, she belongs somewhere. This is why intimacy with certain women carries such extraordinary intensity, such rawness, such an unforgettable weight, because it is never purely physical. It is her way of collapsing into someone who finally made her feel like she existed. And when a man interprets this as love, he is only partially mistaken. It is love, but not the kind he is imagining. It is the love she desperately craves, but cannot sustain on her own. The connection she reaches toward, but has never learned how to build and maintain. That is why it so frequently concludes in confusion. She surrendered her loneliness to you, but when the night ends, that loneliness finds its way back. And here is the devastating reality. Most men never come close to understanding how much pain they were actually touching in that moment. You believed she was present because she was drawn to you. In truth, she was present because she could no longer endure the silence living inside her. She used intimacy as a bridge stretched across her own emptiness, even knowing that bridge would collapse the moment daylight arrived. This reason is the most heartbreaking of all four, because it means that sometimes you are not competing with another man for her attention. You are competing with the shadows that live within her own heart. And regardless of how completely you give yourself, if she has never faced those shadows directly, whatever connection forms between you can never truly last. But for that one night, you were not simply another man to her. You were the lifeline she was desperately reaching toward, even if only for a single brief moment of relief from herself. Now you see it clearly. The hidden reasons women are intimate with men are never random, and they are almost never as uncomplicated as pure physical desire. Sometimes it is validation, the relentless pursuit of seeing herself reflected as someone wanted and worthy. Sometimes it is escape, breaking loose from the invisible cages that daily life has constructed tightly around her. Sometimes it is power, the need to prove to herself that she could possess what others could not reach. And sometimes it is connection, pouring warmth into the silence of her loneliness through the closeness of another person. None of these truths make women villainous, just as they do not absolve men of their own complexity. They make us all deeply human, messy, contradictory, propelled forward by wounds and needs we almost never speak honestly about. But here is precisely where most men fall short. They interpret these concealed motivations as love, as destiny, as something permanent and meant to last. And when she withdraws, when she vanishes without explanation, when she conducts herself as though nothing between you held any meaning, they bleed quietly on the inside. Not because she deliberately deceived them, but because they never understood the unspoken reason she was present in the first place. This ignorance is the precise reason heartbreak cuts so devastatingly deep. It is not simply the loss of her. It is the unbearable confusion of never knowing what was genuinely real and what was something else entirely. The truth is that intimacy is never purely physical. It is psychological. It is emotional. It operates on something primal and ancient. And unless you develop the ability to recognize the hidden motivations behind it, you will remain permanently blind, endlessly guessing, endlessly offering your heart to women who were never truly offering theirs in return. But if you begin identifying the patterns, if you start listening not to her spoken words, but to her silence, not to the smile she shows you, but to the hunger living beneath it, you will develop a clarity that most men will spend their entire lives without reaching. You will stop confusing being selected for being genuinely loved. You will stop mistaking a single moment for a lasting promise. And within that clarity, you will finally learn to protect your own heart while still offering your full strength to the world. So I will leave you with this question. When you look back honestly at the women you have been with, which of these four hidden reasons feels most recognizable to you? Was it validation, escape, power, or connection? Leave your answer in the comments below. I genuinely want to hear your truth. And if this video shifted something in how you see things, do one thing for me right now. Hit like, subscribe, and pass it along to someone in your life who needs to hear this tonight. Because the more men who develop this understanding, the fewer hearts will be shattered by confusion they never saw coming. And perhaps, just perhaps, you will begin seeing women not as puzzling mysteries demanding to be solved, but as deeply human beings carrying hidden battles you were never supposed to fully see.